Welcome in to CBS News 24/7. I'm Mugo Odigwe. We are keeping a close eye on the White House, where President Donald Trump is set to announce new tariffs, all while the administration defends its Houthi PC small group chat on all fronts. Plus, we'll speak to a retired Army major about what is supposed to happen to detailed messages about a military attack on an enemy, and the state that could roll back child labor laws to fill jobs vacated by undocumented immigrants. You're watching CBS News 24/7. The Atlantic posting new screen grabs and a fresh article today giving even more details about the national security officials who discussed a military operation on Signal, a non-government-approved messaging app. Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, was mistakenly added to that chat. And this morning, they published new details about the messages. So let's get into it. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz added Goldberg to the Houthi PC small group chat, where messages were set to erase after 1 week. Waltz outlined goals for the group, saying, quote, establishing a principals group for coordination on Houthis, particularly over the next 72 hours. Further into the chain, Pete Hegseth sent a team update outlining timing for the mission and giving details on the operation, including those about F-18s and strike zones. And as you can see, included in the chat, Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Editors from The Atlantic made the decision to release the messages after the White House downplayed the importance of the group chat just yesterday. Two of the people involved in that group chat, CIA Director John Ratcliffe and National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, testified in day 2 of the Worldwide Threats Assessment hearing, this time in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Our CBS 24/7 streaming team is following this story for you. Security coordinating producer James Laporta is in the newsroom. CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman is in the White House. And we're going to start with Willie. Willie, good to see you again today. We know the president is expected to announce new tariffs on the auto industry soon, and we'll bring that news when we have it. But how is the White House defending that group chat today?
Hey there, Muko. Good to be with you. Well, the White House press secretary spoke to members of the media here just a while ago, and she not only blasted The Atlantic, the outlet that reported this story, but the journalist involved as well. And we've seen those statements coming from White House officials doing just that. But we are getting some reaction to some of the other top officials who were in this group chat, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said someone made a big mistake and added a journalist, referring to the journalist, in this case, Jeffrey Goldberg, who was added to that chat. And you also mentioned Steve Witkoff, who has really been responding against this and talking about the situation itself, because the reason why that's important is because he was in Russia at the time, and the device that would have had the Signal app on it was not with him. The White House says that he was given access to a secured and classified server when he was in Russia. Of course, this comes after the U.S. pushes for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, and Witkoff wasn't able to access his devices that would have had Signal on it until after he left Russia and was back in the United States. So I wanted to point that out there. But still, nonetheless, this is certainly a situation that the White House has fiercely had to push back and answer questions about, as all of these officials who were on this group chat were discussing sensitive information. The White House says that this wasn't classified information, but certainly it is not information that journalists are privy to before those strikes take place, Mugo.
All right, Willie James Inman, thank you so much for your reporting today. Appreciate your time. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth visiting Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickman in Hawaii right now. It's his first visit to the area since taking office. He answered questions about the Signal group chat, saying the messages were not war plans. Let's take a listen.
Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, No flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
CBS News National Security Coordinating Producer James Laporta joins us now. James, good to see you on the stream today. What are you and your CBS colleagues hearing in the halls of the Pentagon and from your military sources about how the Secretary of State there, Pete Hegseth, and the others are handling this whole situation?
The words that can be described to what they're saying is disbelief and confusion. They simply do not believe the messaging from the Trump administration right now. And that's because members of the intelligence community, members of the military, all go through operational security training. Yearly, they go through operational security training. So when they're saying, well, none of this was classified, or you know, no harm, no foul here, they're just not believing it, and they're confused on how this information could not be classified. So these, we just heard Defense Secretary Hegseth say there that, well, these aren't war plans, but they are usually included in what are called operation orders, or an op-ord in military parlance. An operations order would include those types of details of what type of aircraft would be targeting Houthi militia, you know, what time that would those strikes would go down. So all that information would be included in operation orders, and typically operation orders are classified.
And James, just as you just said, there seems to be some confusion over whether the chat should be classified or not. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, she spoke about the status of the chat while testifying on Capitol Hill this morning. So let's take a listen to that. We'll talk to you on the other side.
Information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack should be classified as top secret. Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that. I just point out that the DoD classification guidance is separate from the ODNI's classification guidance.
Do you think it would be materially different?
Ultimately, the Secretary of Defense holds the authority to classify or declassify.
Do you think it's likely that DoD guidance is materially different from what I just read?
I haven't reviewed the DoD guidance.
So, James, can you talk to us about the safeguards around classified and unclassified information?
Sure. Each government agency is going to have, you know, different minor differences in policy regarding the, safeguarding of both classified and unclassified information, or what the government might call controlled unclassified information. But generally speaking, they're broadly the same. And the reason why they're broadly the same is because agencies work with each other. The Defense Department works with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The Defense Department works with the CIA and the NSA and all these other government agencies. So generally speaking, to have operability across government agencies, they typically have the same safeguards in place. Now, let's say hypothetically the information wasn't classified, for the sake of argument. There's still a violation there, according to members of the IC that I've spoken to and members of the military that I've spoken to. There's still a violation on of operational security protocols and cybersecurity protocols. So regardless if it was classified or not, information such as we're going to use these jets to attack at this time should not be passed over signal, period.
And
that's what they've told me.
And you would think that's pretty straightforward, even for me. And I don't have your experience, because, James, you are a former Marine sergeant and you worked in intelligence. Could you talk to us about how this scandal affects our service members?
For the rank and file, really, it's a question of credibility, right? The members of this principal committee, some of them, have for years argued that we need to hold senior leaders accountable. And they're absolutely correct. Senior leaders should be accountable. And they will preach leadership starts at the top. And it does. But now all of a sudden when this comes around to them, well, you know, there's no harm, there's nothing to see here. So really what's on the line for your rank and file military members who, again, what is from the lowest private to the 4-star general, it's hammered into them. Operational security. You don't talk about these things. You know, when a private is deploying overseas, they're not even allowed to give an exact date to their family members of when they're deploying overseas. Family members are also aware of operational security protocols. So for them, really what's on the line is credibility.
Right. Wow. Okay. James Laporta, thank you so much for joining us on the stream today. Appreciate it. And as we mentioned, top intelligence officials testified before the House Intelligence Committee. CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who was part of the group chat, was asked about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's drinking during the hearing. Listen.
To your knowledge, do you know whether Pete Hegseth had been drinking before he leaked classified information?
I don't have any knowledge of Secretary Hegseth's personal habits.
Director Radcliffe, same question. Yes or no?
You know, no, I'm going to answer that. I think that's an offensive line of questioning. The answer is no. I find it interesting that you want to. I'm going to answer. You asked me a question. Do you want an answer?
No, listen.
You don't want to focus on the good work that the CIA is doing, that the intelligence community.
Director, I reclaim my time. Director, I reclaim my time.
All right, CBS News Congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now from Capitol Hill to discuss this hearing. Good to see you again today, Nicole. What did we learn about the Signal group chat from that hearing on the House side today?
Well, I'm not sure we learned too much more than what we heard yesterday. I mean, once again, there was CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who you heard from just there, as well as DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard, again, continued to defend their use of this chat, although DNI Director Gabbard did acknowledge that this was sensitive information that was discussed, but continued to insist that it was not classified, as did the CIA Director. And of course, that really was kind of the crux of the hearing, especially now that the Atlantic has released some of those messages. You know, was that information classified or not, based on DoD guidance, based on guidance in the intelligence community, and really trying to get at whether or not there was a violation committed. Certainly there was a violation committed in the minds of many Democrats in the sense of putting out information that they say and they believe could have compromised the safety of U.S. troops had some type of foreign enemy been privy to that information. So that is the real concern here. And of course, we know that members of the House Intelligence Committee met with these intel officials behind closed doors and continued to say that they were dissatisfied by their answers. Same thing happened over on the Senate side yesterday. I think the big question for many who remain concerned about this issue is, will there be any kind of accountability? And one thing we have noticed throughout the course of the day is we are hearing from more congressional Democrats writ large who continue to call for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to be fired or resign. That started with a call yesterday from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and then today Leader Chuck Schumer told me that he agrees with Leader Jeffries that in fact Pete Hegseth should be fired, and he posted that message on X a couple of hours after we asked him that question. We have seen other rank and file members as well call for the resignations not only of Hegseth but also the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and other officials who were involved in this text chain. There is a sense among other lawmakers, most notably some congressional Republicans, who do feel this issue merits further investigation and review, most notably the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, who says that he will ask the administration to provide an inspector general report of what happened here, and does want to hear more from administration officials in a bipartisan fashion in terms of what happened here and what went wrong.
Yeah, and Nicole, that's literally part of my next question for you, because you just talked about how lawmakers are responding to the testimony of top security officials. But any chance that we will actually see action come out of today's hearing?
Well, again, I mean, I think in terms of next steps, you know, it is pretty significant that you have someone like Chairman Wicker work in a bipartisan fashion with his Democratic counterpart on the Senate Armed Services Committee saying, yes, we want to look into this further, you know, because quite frankly, on the other side of the hill, when you look over at the House, most congressional Republicans, for the most part, are saying, look, this was a mistake. Yes, it was sloppy, not a good look, but we need to move on. But yet over in the Senate, you do have some congressional Republicans who, as I mentioned, feel that this merits further review. So again, we'll have to see how quickly the Senate Armed Services Committee acts, but they do want more information around this. Of course, getting back to congressional Democrats, many of them have sent letters to the administration asking them to preserve records of this signal text chat, asking for more information. And so, again, we'll have to see if the administration responds to those demands.
All right, we'll see what comes next. Nicole Killian, thank you so much for your time today. We have new video of a Tufts University graduate student being arrested by federal agents. That incident is sparking new protests, and that's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. A live look at the White House, where President Trump is expected to announce tariffs on cars shipped to the United States. The announcement comes as a 25% tariff on imported vehicles from Canada and Mexico is set to take effect on April 2nd. We'll bring you the president's remarks here on CBS News 24/7. Well, let's go to Massachusetts now, where a Ring camera captured the moment ICE agents arrested a Tufts University graduate student. We want to show you that video up close. Watch the lower left corner here as authorities approached the young woman and handcuffed her. Now, this happened right outside an off-campus apartment building in Somerville, just north of Boston. A lawyer for the student says she is a Muslim Turkish student with a valid student visa. Let's go to our breaking news correspondent, Chanel Call, in the CBS newsroom in New York. Chanel, good to see you again today. That video is terrifying because when moments like that happen, you don't know who is grabbing you. So can you tell us what we know right now about that arrest?
Yeah, and Mugo, we actually also have another angle of that scene to share with you. So I want to show you that video right now. It essentially shows 6 plainclothes agents handcuffing 30-year-old Rumeysa Ozturk. Once we show you that video, you'll be able to see it, and you can also hear the person who captured this video actually noting that most of the officers there were masked. These Homeland Security agents, they were there, they removed her backpack, and then eventually they walked her down the street into a vehicle. Now, all of this happened on Tuesday evening, and we should mention Ozturk is a Turkish national, also an international graduate student at Tufts University in Massachusetts. Now, in a petition that was filed in Boston federal court, her lawyer, Mugo, says that she was leaving her home, heading to an iftar dinner with friends when this happened on Tuesday evening. Federal agents have so far not explained why she was taken from her home and detained.
Wow, and Chanel, here's the other part of this story that just blows my mind here. Lawyers for that student, they say they do not know where she is right now and have not been able to contact her. So do we know what's going on there?
Yeah, a bit of an update with this. So earlier today, Mugo, her lawyers had said, we don't know where she is, we don't know where she's being held, and we haven't been able to contact her. But just moments ago, a DHS spokesperson confirmed to CBS News that Ozturk is now being held in a Louisiana detention center. That spokesperson also says Ozturk is, quote, granted the privilege to be in this country on a visa. DHS and ICE investigations found Ozturk engaged in activities in support of Hamas, a foreign terrorist organization that relishes the killing of Americans. A visa, they say, is a privilege, not a right. And glorifying and supporting terrorists who kill Americans, they say, is grounds for a visa issuance to be terminated. This, it goes on to say, is common sense security. But again, no word from federal agents on if charges will be laid here.
Wow. Okay, Chanel Cole, thank you so much for that update. We appreciate it. And we want to go to Florida now, where teenagers could soon be eligible to do the jobs once held by migrant workers. CBS News Miami's Chelsea Jones tells us the state Senate narrowly approved a proposal that would lift restrictions on when 16 and 17-year-olds can work.
I talked to a 17-year-old who says he's been looking for work for 2 years, but says he's been told he's too young. His name is Alex Jesse, and he's been working for his dad's company for spring break to make some extra cash. He says Senate Bill $918 would have helped him make money so he can buy and maintain a car, plus hang out with friends like any normal teen. Now, the idea with this bill is that low-wage or undesirable jobs that were once filled with migrants get filled with younger workers. That's a solution Governor Ron DeSantis says he supports. Tuesday, the state legislature advanced the bill that would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work before 6:30 a.m. or after 11 p.m. on school days. It allows them to also work more than 8 hours on a school day and more than 30 hours a week. It would also end the requirement for teens to have 30-minute lunch breaks while working those 8-hour shifts. But for Jesse, going to school and working sets him up for his future as a welder.
Hopefully, I either want to go out to the oil rigs and weld underwater or do the pipelines.
This bill would also allow 14 and 15-year-olds to work if they are homeschooled or enrolled in virtual schools. It will now pass through 2 other committees before heading to the full Senate for a vote. In the Redlands, I'm Chelsea Jones for CBS News. Back to you.
A live look at Seattle now, where the Pacific Northwest could see some severe weather today, including strong winds, hail, and even a chance of a tornado. Meteorologist Darren Peck is here to tell us more. Hey, Darren.
Yeah, Mugo, that requires a bit of an explanation. You do not often get severe weather like that in the Pacific Northwest. If you're going to get it, you have to have something unique like that. Look at that storm. That's unmistakable. That area of low pressure tightly wound up like that, sitting right off the coast, that is what's going to work its way onshore into the Pacific Northwest over the course of the next 24 hours. But it's really tonight when you're going to see the leading edge of that come on shore. And watch what the screen's going to light up here. When the leading edge of that big spinning cinnamon roll out there, right there, moves a whole lot of yellow and orange through Seattle, basically. This is their biggest threat. That's tonight. That's like 7, 8 o'clock tonight, where you can get some isolated thunderstorms. But they're not done, because the center of that thing, that big spinning low, that comes on shore then tomorrow. You can actually see it in the radar. So they're going to be busy there tomorrow with wind and more rain. But tonight is really the bigger concern there from a significant kind of rain and thunderstorms and all that kind of thing. There's one other item to discuss across the midsection of the country. Take a look at Texas, which is now falling into a deepening drought. As the storm that we just watched moves across the rest of the country, Texas is about to get good news, but almost too much of a good thing. Look at all the rain that's going to move through Texas over the course of the next 2 days. This is great from the drought perspective, but it's almost more than they need, because when we visualize the problems down here, the Storm Prediction Center has actually put a red bullseye down there for excessive rainfall. So they're getting rain, Mugo, and this will help from a drought standpoint. But the problem with this is it's too much in too short a period of time, and now they're concerned that they might have some flooding issues down there.
Context.
Exactly.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Darren.
See ya.
Trump's team continues to play down the group chat discussing a military operation. We'll speak to a retired Army major about those messages. That's next. Welcome back. This morning, the Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, released new details of the group chat he was included on. Our own senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe just talked with him about why they released a new article today. Listen.
You published an article on Monday.
Yeah.
And withheld certain details.
Yeah.
You published more on Wednesday.
Right.
Why did you publish what you published?
Because of Tuesday. Because on Tuesday, the President of the United States said there's nothing classified or sensitive in the emails, in the texts, and because various other national security officials said the same thing. So what we did yesterday was, given that information, we went to the agencies, CIA, DOD, DNI, et cetera, and said, you guys have said there's nothing classified or dangerous in here. We're just double checking with you. Is there anything that you believe for national security reasons we should redact? The CIA asked us to redact something, and we did. No other agency asked. The White House spokeswoman gave us a kind of boring, generic kind of, we wish that you wouldn't do this, but you know, that there's nothing classified here. It shouldn't even go into that area. So the reason to post it is because I think people should see for themselves. They're saying nothing happened. I'm saying that this represents a serious breach in national security and communications. And so, you know what? That's what journalism is for. Here, go look at it for yourselves and decide if this represented a serious breach of secrecy and national security.
And you will hear more from that interview later on all CBS platforms. The messages were shared by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Our very own Ellie Watson asked him about the messages just yesterday. Listen.
Mr. Secretary, the messages the White House called authentic did at the very least include sensitive details about targets and timing. Did you declassify that information before you put it in the chat? And are you using Signal to discuss operations as sensitive as the strikes against the Houthis on a government or a personal phone?
First, all I would say is the strikes against the Houthis that night were devastatingly effective.
Those same troops that you are proud of, do you regret putting information like the ones you did in the Signal chat that could endanger those same American service members?
Nobody's texting war plans.
Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Major and military analyst Mike Lyons. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. You are also a combat veteran of Operation Desert Storm, and that is where you commanded an artillery battery and were awarded the Bronze Star. So what do you make of these messages? Would you consider them classified?
Well, it wasn't classified up to a point. I think the message that the Secretary of Defense put in there when he starts talking about the strike in above itself, I think that crosses the Rubicon, becomes classified. But let's take a step back even further. This is all about process, and bad process, frankly, from a group of relatively inexperienced individuals who were maybe trying to do the right thing by gathering the right people initially in what was going to be a very important mission. Look, anytime the United States goes to war and fires on another sovereign nation, we have to have everything tightly wired here. So, you know, what started out as likely a good intent in this Signal chat to organize people to do that spilled over to the operational. And it just frankly tells me from a process perspective that this group didn't practice. They didn't figure out what they were going to do first in order to make this mission go. And then it clearly spills over into the classified as it winds down.
And does the Army ever disclose attack methods like this? For example, saying that F-18s were used. As we know, the fight against the Houthis is ongoing. Does this compromise future campaigns?
Well, I'm not sure it compromises future campaigns. I mean, we attack doctrinally, and what I mean by that is the first time we go in to make this kind of attack from the air, the first thing we take is the air defense platforms out. So that suppression of enemy air defense is the first thing that goes. And so, but there was too much information. They talked about the airframes. They talked about the Reaper drones. They had a lot more information there with regard to what they were attacking with and the date time groups as to when they were doing it. Our technology is so much greater, though, than what this enemy had, so that their confidence level was high that the air defense systems weren't going to take out our system. So I think that was kind of part of the bravado, I think, that I saw in this group chat as the results were finally released there. There's no question, though, when you start talking about buildings going down and targeting individuals like this thing did. It talked about we got the missile guy and his girlfriend or whatever. I mean, now you're talking sources and methods, because where that information came from remains to be seen. We don't know if that came from an ally, if that came from internal forces, and it tells me that we've been tracking that guy for a while. So, you know, again, there was much classified information and sources and methods that was released by the end of that group chat. Now, the administration can argue that they've declassified it now at this point, but in the moment, it clearly was something that was classified.
Yeah, but Mike, I have to ask, did you or your superiors ever share this type of information over a non-government secured method of communication?
No, absolutely not. And, you know, I worked as an intel officer as well. I could tell you this, in the moment, mistakes happen. You know, when in combat, there are certain things that sometimes get out on the radio, and there are intelligence leaks. This was something that, again, should have been pre-planned. And again, at the level we're seeing it at the Secretary of Defense and at the NSA level and the National Security Advisor level, it is just something we just hadn't seen before, and I wouldn't expect. The level of detail that you have the Secretary of Defense involved in is remarkable, frankly. I'm not sure we'd have seen this from previous Secretary of Defenses. That gets turned over to the uniformed military. Now, let's talk about who dodged the bullet here. There was no uniformed military on that chain, so they're they're out of their chain of command here for this, because I'm sure that all it would have taken is somebody to pierce the veil and say, look, we shouldn't be talking about any of this on this group chat at this point. So I think that just shows the level of inexperience, unfortunately, because the group has got great intentions, but this is serious stuff when you're attacking another nation like this.
Yeah. And I have to ask about consequences, because if you were still in the military, what would happen to someone who makes an error like this?
Well, there'll be an investigation, and the main question is, how did this reporter's phone number wind up on a cell phone that was eventually used in order to bring him into this group chat? I think there's going to have to be a deep forensic dive into how that happened. Michael Waltz says he doesn't know this reporter, doesn't know how that happened, but it did happen. There should have been accountability as to, once the group was set on making sure that everybody in the group was who they were. That fell down, but there would be an investigation. At this point, though, considering that all the players on the group chat are political, this comes down to a political decision. If this is in the military chain of command, there likely would be consequences. Anything from someone being charged with this for negligence, let's say, or relieved of their duties or something. But again, right now it looks like it's going to be a political decision, because all of the key players are all in politics.
Yeah, some very good perspective there. And do you think this could jeopardize our relationship with our allies who share intelligence with us?
I think it could, and I think we have to work at that. Look, our allies collect information on us. Every single one of the people on that chat has been targeted by our allies, our enemies. They've got to be the most collected information pieces that are in the world right now, because it's important. They want to hear what they're saying. That's why I just don't understand on any level why they didn't move this over to some other high source or other government way to communicate with each other once the operation started. So it could, especially if the sources and information that came about that target came from another host nation. So like anything else, trust will have to be rebuilt here. I think within the group, there'll be concerns about jumping into chat files like that going forward as well. But for sure, it's important the United States have allies and partners. And frankly, from a political side, we haven't done a very good job with that since the beginning of the administration.
Right. I'm sure we're not done talking about any of this just yet. Mike Lyons, thank you so much for joining us on the stream today.
Thanks for having me.
We are watching Wall Street as investors brace for Trump's looming tariffs on auto imports. The president is expected to unveil the new duties today. By today's closing bell, the Dow dropped more than 100 points. General Motors and Stellantis each fell more than 3%. Let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map, brought to you by FinViz here, showing the top 500 stocks in real time. The red indicates the stock is down, green means it's up, and the size of the box represents market cap. And it looks like a down day for Wall Street today. CBS News senior business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent joins us now. Jolene, good to see you on the stream. I really appreciate your time here today. With the constant changes in trade policy, it's easy to get lost. So can you help us all just get out of tariff whiplash? Would these new tariffs, how would they affect us here in the United States?
Mugo, it's so nice to meet you, first of all. And looking at the tariff announcement we expect from the White House later today, there's a lot that remains to be answered in terms of specifics. But what we do know is that automakers, a lot of those stocks were down today, including Tesla and General Motors. The idea from the president here is that there would be more tariffs levied on imported cars to the United States. But what you need to know is that nearly half of all vehicles are imported to the U.S. They rely largely on foreign parts. And so what this would do here, it was actually the goal is for the White House to increase production of vehicles here in the United States. But because costs would go up, it's unlikely that that would actually happen. It would end up resulting in companies, car makers, passing on those higher costs to the customer in the sticker price that you see at the dealership. While President Trump says he wants to increase the number of jobs in manufacturing, look, that takes time, right? 18 to 24 months for new jobs to materialize in plants and production facilities and on down the line. So you could see increased prices for cars. And then also a sort of after effect of that would be an increased demand for used cars. And you'll remember from the pandemic, when demand for used cars goes up, it also means the prices go up. And so President Trump has called April 2nd next week Liberation Day when it comes to the economy and levying those tariffs on trading partners. But, the impact on the American worker, Mugo, could be really big here. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 1 million people work in auto manufacturing in the U.S., 2 million work at car dealerships. We expect to see a big impact if these tariffs indeed go through.
There's so many tariffs at this point, Joling, I don't even know which is which. So thank you for joining us today and just helping us break it all down. Appreciate your time.
Here for you.
Frustration over Social Security, the changes that's making it harder for Americans to get their benefits. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. AARP is seeing a huge increase in calls regarding the changes to Social Security benefits. An AARP spokesperson says they've taken about 2,000 calls a week regarding Social Security since the beginning of February, and that is double the amount of calls AARP normally gets. Reports are that the surge is in response to the Trump administration's changes to Social Security. A workforce reduction is leading to longer wait times on the phone and the shuttering of some field offices. Beneficiaries are also now required to submit identification in person rather than online to prevent fraud. But some at AARP say it shouldn't be this hard to get money from something they've paid into.
It's not an entitlement. It's a program that people have worked hard and they've paid into, and they want their promises guaranteed and to be fulfilled.
One South Carolina woman says she waited 2 hours on the phone before being directed to a local appointment. After another hour wait on the day of that appointment, she was told by Social Security workers that they couldn't help her. She says she eventually got what she needed from the ID Me website, but is concerned for older people who are going through the same process.
I couldn't imagine if this was my grandmother. I would be so outraged that my grandmother was treated this way. Every person may not have the time or the know-how or the sight to be able to stay on screens that long, to be able to navigate. It's just terrible.
The turmoil comes as the Senate Finance Committee held a hearing for Trump's pick to lead the Social Security Administration. So who is Frank Bisignano? He is the CEO of financial technology company Fiserv. In 2019, he led Fiserv's merger with First Data Corp, where he served as CEO. Before that, he had a career on Wall Street as a co-chief operating officer for JP Morgan Chase. Bisignano says if confirmed, those long wait times will be a thing of the past.
On the phone, I'm committed to reducing wait times and providing beneficiaries with a better experience. Waiting 20 minutes plus to get an answer will be of yesteryear. I also believe we can significantly improve the length of the disability claim process. Importantly, I think a 1% error rate based on the Inspector General report is 5 decimal places too high. We'll get the error rate down and be more accurate in payments.
Bisignano also says he wants to motivate the workforce, which he described as unsatisfied. This comes as more than 5,000 employees have either been fired or pushed out since President Trump and Doge head Elon Musk targeted the office. Staffing was already at a 50-year low. The last Social Security Commissioner, Martin O'Malley, criticized the move in an interview with CBS Evening News anchor John Dickerson.
I believe it'll cascade into the sort of collapse that actually interrupts benefits for some period of time.
No checks. People expecting checks each month won't show up.
You cannot fail to put oil in an old car, fail to maintain an old car, and expect that that engine won't lock.
Senate Democrats also sounding off about efforts to reduce the number of Social Security staff in offices. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said the Trump administration wants to eliminate Social Security.
And if you don't believe us, listen to them. Musk says it's a Ponzi scheme. Tell the 78-year-old lady who needs it for medicine that it's a Ponzi scheme, that she shouldn't get her check. Trump spent 10 minutes lying about Social Security when he addressed the joint session. And now we have the Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Lutnick, saying his mother-in-law wouldn't mind missing a check. Well, no mother-in-law would miss minding a check if they have a billionaire son-in-law.
Schumer went on to say that he believes the Trump administration wants to destroy Social Security from within as a pretext to slash benefits and privatize the program. The Supreme Court is upholding Biden-era regulations on hard-to-trace weapons known as ghost guns. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford has more.
Well, the Supreme Court is saying if it looks like a gun, it acts like a gun, it fires like a gun, then it's a gun that the ATF can regulate. And that means if you want to buy one of these so-called ghost guns on the internet, which you then put together yourself at home in a matter of minutes, you're going to have to go through a background check to get it. And the manufacturers are going to have to put a serial number on it. Those kind of measures put in place by the Biden administration. This is a 7-2 decision. It was written by Justice Neil Gorsuch, and they're saying that the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, can regulate these ghost guns just like they do the more traditional firearms. It's a victory for law enforcement, for gun control groups who say they've seen a proliferation of these guns people are buying on the internet and putting together at home. At crime scenes, they're recovering like 1,000% more in recent years, and they're dangerous. So they were arguing for this kind of regulation. It's not a surprise. The Supreme Court last year had said this regulation could remain in place while this case played out. So today's decision really just makes that permanent, that the ATF can continue to regulate these guns. There was a dissent. Justices Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito would have dissented. They said it's up to Congress to change these laws, not the courts. Back to you.
Crawford, thank you. A wild scene in Australia. A senator brings a giant dead salmon to Parliament. We'll tell you why. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Here's some news we are following around the world. A deadly wildfire is spreading in South Korea. At least 18 people have been killed and more than 27,000 were forced to evacuate. Authorities also had to transfer thousands of inmates out of prisons in the area. A helicopter also crashed during efforts to contain the fires. Officials say the pilot, who was the only one on board, died in that crash. The head of Pope Francis' medical team is revealing more about his care. He says the Pope came close to dying twice before recovering to the point where he could return to the Vatican. That doctor also says the medical team considered letting Pope Francis die at one critical point during a breathing crisis. In the end, though, he says the team tried all treatments possible at the urging of the Pope's personal healthcare assistant. In Australia, a senator brought a dead salmon into Parliament to protest laws that would protect salmon farming in Tasmania. You can see that there.
Your environment credentials for a rotten, stinking extinction salmon. Extinction salmon.
Senator Hanson-Young removed the prop from the chamber.
Okay, that is a new one for me. On Tuesday, Australia's federal government introduced a bill that would remove the environment minister's ability to revoke some past decisions. The reforms were aimed at preserving the Tasmanian salmon industry. These two otters, named Louie and Ophelia, might as well be named Bonnie and Clyde. They are both on the run in Green Bay, Wisconsin, after breaking out from a zoo during a winter storm. The Great Escape happened last week. They went through a hole in the fence at the new zoo and adventure park. And those North American river otters had a wild night, sliding around the fresh snow on their bellies. The zoo is on the mission to find them and set out traps and wildlife cameras. They've even asked community members to keep a lookout. America Decides with Major Garrett is next, marking 1 year since the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed in Baltimore. Hear from a faith leader who's helping crew members. You're watching CBS News 24/7.